Welcome to TaraChessAcademy. Today we're going to learn about a special endgame with a pawn versus a rook.
Hi everyone! For today we prepared an interesting endgame for you. So if you see the position on the chessboard, most of you can think, wow, the rook is much stronger, so I would like to play this position for black, but not this time. So today we discuss position where just a little pawn is much stronger than the rook. So white pawn moves up, yeah, as you can see. So it's close to the last rank, and of course white would be happy to promote. Black's problem is that the king is too far away from the pawn, and that's why it can't help the rook to stop it. So of course, if black has chances to move the rook at the same rank with the king and with the pawn, yeah, it could be a draw. So black is ready to sacrifice the rook for the pawn. So we should avoid this, right? So we don't want to trade our pawn to the rook. The pawn is much stronger in this position. So Tara, what should we start with?
I think we should move the pawn because if you do the king to b7, you don't want black to give checks. It would make it harder.
Yeah, and of course we don't want black just to play rook c5, yeah? Then it would be just not a problem at all to trade the rook to the pawn. So yeah, that's why we start with c7 in this position. Okay, so what can black do? Rook d8 and rook c5 don't work in this position, so I don't say anything else except making a check. Okay, and now it's important where to move the king in this position. So what ideas do you have, Tara?
There's lots of options for the king, but for this move you have to be very careful because only one move works.
That's
If
right.
you go your king to the 7th rank, if you go a7 or b7, the rook would pin the pawn and go to d7. Then your pawn can't promote.
Yeah, so just it's pinned and black gonna trade the rook to the pawn. So don't put the king to the 7th rank in this position. So maybe I can try king c5. Yeah, so I attack the rook. I want to promote. Is it a good idea?
I think there's some problems if you go to the same file as the pawn because black might have chances of doing a skewer. If
So,
they go their rook to d1,
and of course,
and
if you
then if white
promote,
promotes, then a skewer.
so
Yes.
I think it's better just to move your king somewhere to support the pawn, but after rook c1, of course, white can't win anymore. Okay, so we have less options. We don't play king a7 or b7. We don't play king c5. So what should we do?
We can't go anywhere on the 6th rank because then the rook is still attacking the king. We have to go somewhere on the 5th rank. We have to choose a5 or b5.
Yeah, you're right.
If you go your king to a5, there's some problems with this move. They could move their rook to c6, and then they would win the pawn.
Nothing good for us. So let's go back.
So king b5 is better.
Yeah, so you see we discussed all candidate moves except king b5. So if all these moves don't work, so that's why we have to play king b5. It looks like black still has nothing to do, so rook c6 doesn't work, rook d8 doesn't work, so I don't see anything else except just making a check on d5. So what happens then? Where to move the king?
This is another point where you have to be careful. As we saw before, if you go to the C file, they have chances of doing a skewer.
Don't do this. So what if I just move back? Is it a good idea?
It's not bad, but You don't have to repeat.
Probably rook d6, yeah?
Yeah, you don't have to repeat moves.
Mhm. So maybe I should move the king to b4 in this position?
Yeah,
Mhm.
because if you go a4, then they go the rook to c5
Yeah.
and they win the pawn.
Of course. So king b4. I think I know what's gonna happen then. So rook d4.
Here, there's two options. You could go b3 or c3.
Mhm.
The
You know,
difference now is if you go to the c file, they don't have chances of a skewer because if they go the rook to d1, then we could go the king to c2.
yeah, of course. So I think that there is no difference between king b3 and king c3 in this position. So both of these moves would be okay. Yeah. So rook d3, for instance, and king c2. So you may think that that's okay. I did my best. The game is over. I'm gonna promote to a queen, but not this time because black still has the last chance to make a draw in this position. So black can just play rook d4, and you see what is the problem. So what happens if I promote to a queen in this position?
Then black has a tactic to save the game. If they go the rook to c4,
Mhm. Of course, I have to
if
capture.
yeah, or black would win.
Yeah.
And then after the queen captures the rook, the black king is in the corner and it doesn't have any squares.
Stalemate. Okay, so but what should we do in this position? So we can't promote to a queen. Black just want to play rook c4. So what should we do?
We could promote to a rook.
Oh, okay, that's smart. So let's try. So we
The
promote
difference
to a rook.
the difference here is if they try the same thing and go the rook to c4, then we capture the rook. Here,
Mhm.
it's not a stalemate because the king could go to a2.
And I think I found mate in one.
Yeah, you go the rook to a4.
Of course. Yeah. So that's why let's go back. Yeah, but it seems like position is equal, rook versus rook, but not this time. The biggest problem is the position of the black king, yeah? So after we promote it to a rook, we just have a plan to mate in one, rook a8. So of course, moving the king doesn't work. Yeah, we still can get to a8 in this position. So that's why black has to defend the king and black uses the rook for this. So rook a4. Interesting. Is it possible to win?
It's still possible. We can't go the rook to a8 because then the black rook would capture our rook. But you can still make checkmate in a few moves. You might think it's a draw, rook versus rook, but black's king is in the corner and that's not good. So white will have chances of checkmate, even though the material is equal. White could move the king to b3.
Nice. So now white has like two ideas, to capture the rook or to make a checkmate. Yeah, so if black tries to save the rook, yeah, we have just mate in one. If black tries to protect c1 and plays king b1, yeah, so then we just capture the rook, and of course this position is absolutely winning. So nice endgame.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to others. I'll see you on my next video. Bye!
Bye.